This week, they decided to detain an entire family, including two young teenage boys, members of a mariachi band. In the Rio Grande Valley, mariachi is a varsity sport, a varsity activity. It is huge. It's something that everybody follows and everybody roots for. They're members of Mariachi de Oro. They made a movie about these mariachi bands. Well, they sent them to Dilley Detention Center, wrongly detained this entire family. They have a pending asylum application. There is a very close congressional race going on there. Bobby Pulido against Monica de la Cruz, the Republican. Guess what? They had to release the kids because nobody wants to see kids like those be detained. And we have seen it over and over and over again. Just this last week in Miami, in a place that voted massively for Donald Trump, I heard a Trump supporter crying on TV because his common law wife of 25 years, a Cuban, was deported. And when she went to the immigration check-in, he said to her, "Don't worry about it. They don't deport Cubans." Guess what? Some of these Cubans are being sent to Sudan and Eswatini, if you know where that is. The woman was, okay, well, it's in Africa. The woman was detained. Initially, what was on her record is that she had been in a traffic stop 20 years ago, and she had 3 Xanax pills in her purse without prescription. You start deporting every Latino without prescriptions, with tranquilizers, there's going to be nobody left.
That's a different story, right?
For 3 Xanax pills?
Well, I'm just saying, it sounds like that particular person is not the best case.
For 3 Xanax pills?
Hold on, this is a clear turnaround. This is a clear turnaround for the Trump administration because they definitely ran on mass deportations, not just ran on it, but came into the administration on that very agenda. Listen to this.
If the Republican platform promises to launch the largest deportation operation in the history of our country?
The simple part is seal the border, deport all the illegals. No illegals in, everyone here goes out.
And we're going to have the largest deportation in the history of our country.
I think it's interesting that people focus on, well, how do you deport 18 million people? Let's start with 1 million.
We are going to start the largest mass deportation in the history of our country because we have no choice.
It was clearly, once they started doing it, very unpopular. But that was actually clear, if you were really paying attention, long before this moment. What took them so long?
Well, I mean, I think the fundamental problem here is that what the administration has been doing, instead of going after the worst of the worst, as Joe pointed out, which polls like 70, 80% amongst American voters, they decided to go after a ton of other people, which only polls at 50-50. Can you imagine deporting illegals only to polls at 50-50 because of the way it's being carried out, because of what happened in Minnesota, because of the masked men? No American wants masked people running around the country, picking up people off the street and throwing them in vans, regardless of whether they're here illegally or illegally. Sure, even if you believe all illegals should be deported, the reality is that deporting violent criminals polls a hell of a lot better. The Republican Party, Mike Johnson's finally figuring that out. It's costing votes amongst not just Latino voters, but a lot of other voters. There are moderate Republicans that are losing too. This is a huge error, a huge overplay by the administration, and they're learning the lesson of it. By the way, you start killing American citizens in Minnesota, that's a fail.
It's layers.
Lawful gun owners, that's a fail.
Yeah, it's layers of problems for them. And it might actually be too late. The damage may have been done already because even, just to be clear, they're saying don't talk about this, but the policy is functionally the same. Every day there are stories of immigrants with no criminal record being picked up. Last week, a journalist being picked up who has a pending asylum claim and is married to an American citizen and a pending green card application. So if they talk out of one side of their mouth and then act another way, I don't know if that's going to work.
Yeah, they're in a rock and a hard place because obviously this was the issue that won Trump the election. People cared so much about immigration because we had a porous border. Well, the border closed and independents now are much more focused on affordability and other issues. At the same time, that's the rock. The hard place is that Trump's base is still overwhelmingly supportive of mass deportations. And we've seen that the White House did issue a statement a few hours ago saying nobody is changing the administration's immigration enforcement agenda. And so I think the administration is in a situation now where they could potentially alienate some of the base who wants to see these mass deportations at the same time that independents are growing frustrated.
Yeah, they're going to have to decide if they want to win elections. I mean, I think that's where we're at.
To build on that, Stephen Miller and Donald Trump were the ones who placed themselves in between the rock and the hard place by using this insane immigration rhetoric. The Department of Homeland Security account posted a few months back that they wanted to deport 100 million Americans. There are 50 million immigrants, both legally and illegally, and then 50 million other people in this country who could be deported by this administration. They want to deport 100 million immigrants. They've talked about immigrants. The Department of Homeland Security posted that and called for remigration. So they're definitely pushing an extreme policy that the American people don't like. And I just want to say the American people will not forget the images of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy being shot. The American people will not forget the constitutional rights that were trampled on. They won't forget homes being entered with no warrant, or people being pushed to the ground because they're simply recording, which is a constitutional right. So this administration has overstepped. Now they're running away from their core policy, but keeping the same position, which is not a good look for them.
I don't know where he's getting the 100 million number.
They said that on the Department of Homeland Security account.
Just to go back to the polling,
yeah, that was a sort of like a meme post that they posted.
Department of Homeland
I'm just saying that they did post that number, and it doesn't make any sense.
The other issue with the polling is that the issue itself is not polling as ranked high in Americans' views of what's determining the midterms, what's the most important issue facing Americans. That's in part because under Joe Biden, we had this crisis. It was on our TVs every night. It was in our urban areas, right? We were seeing migrant shelters all over this city in particular. The issue has subsided because of the success of the border. So continuing to make the policy about immigration is just not going to have the same impact on the base as it is because it's not as bad of an issue anymore.
I think it's that plus it is an unpopular issue for Republicans, so it's now being weaponized by the other side. They can not talk about it all they want, but Democrats are going to talk about it because it's actually a motivating issue for a lot of voters who helped put Donald Trump in the White House.
And there's a lot of people in the base who voted for that, but didn't realize that it was going to mean their tias and their abuelas and their girlfriends and their boyfriends and their employees and their friends and their colleagues
being deported. I think that is very true. Everyone, thank you very much for being here. Breaking news, the president's influence put to the test tonight in the state of Georgia, how Trump's endorsement